Thank you, Paula. Good morning. I'm going to talk about recent reforms of advertising of food and beverage in Mexico that have the intention to restrict this kind of advertising. The reason of these changes are public health problems, in particular obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. To give you some details, I can tell you that in Mexico, at least 70% of the population have either obesity or overweight. Mexico also leads the childhood rankings obesity in the world, and also 35% of adolescents has obesity. Diabetes, for example, is the #1 cause of death in our country. And the reasons are many, but I can tell you that at least in Mexico, we are the #1 per capita consumer of soda in the world. It means about 46 gallons of soda per year per person, which is really a lot. So you can imagine the enormous challenge for Mexican healthcare systems for the treatment of these kind of illnesses in our country. So behind these reforms, of course, there are like health and economic reasons. And something similar happened some years ago with tobacco, for example. Before 2009, it was allowed to advertise tobacco in all media without too many restrictions. But now, when it became a serious, healthy, and costly problem, the advertising of tobacco was completely banned, and now it's only allowed to advertise tobacco in adults for magazines, for example. No? Well, the changes on Mexican regulation are the following. First, the reform of the existing regulation of the General Health Law on advertising that requires now a permission to advertise specific products. And also the creation of a set of guidelines that impose new labeling and advertising regulation on entities advertising food and non-alcoholic beverage. These reforms were published in 2014 and were implemented during the last 2 years, and now all these rules are fully enforced. Before these reforms, advertising of food and drinks was deregulated. You could advertise these kind of products at any time on TV, cinemas, and any media without further restrictions that comply with the general rules that stated by the law. The general rules normally mention, for example, that advertising of food and beverage shall not promote habits of eating that may affect health or compare these products in detriment of natural foods, or associate these foods with alcohol or tobacco. It means the rules were really very general. But after the reforms, in addition to comply with the mentioned rules, advertising of food and beverage with high caloric content cannot be transmitted during time when children are more likely to see them. The rationale for this restriction is that children are more susceptible to believe everything they see as an absolute advertising, and they cannot distinguish yet between their fanciful nature from reality, in fact. Now, the previous. How can we identify which product is considered like a high-caloric product? The guidelines classify all food and beverage in 12 categories, and each category have several subcategories. And the guideline states a limit of a given number of calories, energy, or saturated fat that each product has to meet. If the product doesn't meet these limits stated by the guidelines, then it will be considered like a high-caloric product. So I can tell you that at least for flavored drinks, chocolates, snacks, and confectionery, all of these are considered like a high-caloric product. Now, under the guidelines, the advertising of foods and beverage with high-caloric content can only be transmitted on television according to the following schedule. From Monday through Friday, from midnight to 2:30 p.m., and from 7:30 p.m. to midnight, and also from Saturdays and Sundays from midnight to 7 a.m. and from 7:30 p.m. to midnight. The idea is to transmit this advertising when children are supposed to be sleeping or at the school. Now, but like all general rules, there are always exceptions, and this is the case. There is still a possibility for high caloric products to deviate from the mentioned schedule. But for this, they must require a prior authorization that is granted by the Mexican Healthcare Authority by demonstrating that the audience during the hours they want to transmit the advertising includes no more than 35% of children between the age of 4 and 12. It means, for example, you can transmit this kind of advertising during news or sport programs, for example, but you have to demonstrate it before the authority and get the permission that can take about 1 or 2 months. Now, what happened with the products that do meet the nutritional requirements? Well, now under this kind of products can be transmitted on TV, cinema, at any time with a further restriction that comply with the general rules, and they don't have problem. Companies only need to file a notification before the health authority informing that they want to advertise a specific product, but you don't need to get a prior authorization. And finally, there are also some requirements for labeling of these products. For example, now, after the reforms, all the nutritional information shall be on the front of the package. Before the reforms, it was included on the sides or on the back of the package. Now it must be on the front, because the intention of the reform is to make the commercial information as clear as possible. Also now, the information must be complete, and there is an obligation to include the amount of saturated fat, other fats, sugar, sodium, and calories on the packages of the products. And also now there is an obligation to include the total amount of calories of the package, not only per portion. Before the reform, products normally include the total calories per portion, not for the entire product, which is now the obligation. And finally, the health authority created this nutritional logo that any company that wishes to include this logo in their products need to get authorization from the health authority and demonstrate that the products meet the nutritional requirement stated on the guidelines. So if you get the authorization, you can use it in your products, and consumer can see that the products are healthy. So in conclusion, I can say that these reforms were implemented by Mexican government as a strategy to reduce or prevent obesity and all related illnesses and costs that are involved with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina.